I'm Alistair Wright. Thank you for joining us. And today we are joined by Dr. Brian Hainline. Dr. Hainline is the first ever Chief Medical Officer of the NCAA. He's the first Vice President of the USTA and a clinical professor in the Department of Neurology at NYU Grossman School of Medicine. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Hainline.
Great to be here, Alistair.
First question, how did you first begin playing tennis?
Well, tennis was a family sport for us. In fact, in 1974, we were chosen as the USTA Tennis Family of the Year.
Really?
So, I have 7 kids. I didn't have 7 kids. My parents had 7 kids.
Yeah.
They all played tennis. My 2 older brothers played collegiate tennis. My second oldest brother, he was the one who really taught me the game, along with my father, my grandfather as well. My father played college tennis, so it just was a family sport, and it was a great way to get to know the game.
Have you ever had any role models in the tennis world that influenced your love for the sport?
So I would count 2 role models in particular. One was Arthur Ashe. So we grew up in Detroit, and there was this professional tournament that was there every year. And back then the pros didn't make much money, and actually the families would house them because they couldn't even afford the hotels. Arthur Ashe used to always stay at our house.
Really?
And so, I was a young kid, and I was actually a ball boy for him, but then I started following his career and saw how he was not just a great tennis player, won Wimbledon, the US Open and so forth, but really was an agent of change. I mean, he really was very interested in tennis players also getting a good education, and in tennis being part of social activism. So that was one role model, and the other was my brother John. He probably taught me the game more than anyone, and just really got it into my head about all of the nuances that you should be doing on the court, and he probably taught me my love for the game more than anyone else.
Yeah. Do you feel tennis is different from other sports at the collegiate level? If so, what makes it different?
Well, I'm sorry to say that tennis isn't as popular as a lot of other sports at the collegiate level.
Yeah.
Look at football, or look at basketball, and you have March Madness in the Final Four, or look at the college baseball World Series or the softball World Series. So those are really big time events, and people don't talk about tennis at the same level, but it still is important. So this year, for example, or I should say in 2023, in the spring, all 3 divisions, D1, D2, and D3, they're going to be playing the USTA, where they're going to be playing at the USTA national campus for the collegiate titles. So all 3 divisions will be together for a national championship, and we're hoping that's going to then spark it to become like the College World Series.
Yeah.
But it's an individual sport, a team sport. That's what makes it different at the collegiate level. I just wish it were maybe more popular.
Mm-hmm. In the years you've worked with the US Open, how has the USTA worked towards deliberate social change? What does the tournament do well, and what could it do better?
Well, I think a real turning point at the for the USTA was when we were in the middle of the pandemic. There were the blatant murders of several Black individuals, and sort of social justice was coming to the forefront once again in our country, hopefully this time for good and for long. And Naomi Osaka had wanted to really wear the various masks, because we were masking at that time, that would have the names of the individuals who were murdered, or would have Black Lives Matters. And it seemed like a small thing, but actually for the 4 Grand Slams, there were rules of engagement in terms of what you can wear, what you can't wear, can you make political statements, can you not? And all 4 of the Grand Slams rallied together and said that Naomi and others could be wearing these masks, coming onto the court and really projecting an image. So I think that was very important. I think if you look at other aspects of social change, the US Open was the first tournament that gave equal prize money to the men and women.
Really?
And this was really, really important, because before that, and before the WTA was actually formed, and that was with Billie Jean King and 8 others that formed the WTA, women were making maybe 10% as much as men. And there were some very prominent men tournament organizers who said, if the women try to organize, we're going to squash them. So it was really kind of ugly back then. So the US Open was the first major tournament said, hey, we think the women and men deserve equal prize money. So that was a major place of social change as well. And I think really giving the women and the men equal footing, equal exposure at the tournament. So they were very important for women's rights. They were very important for social change around the time of the pandemic. And so those are a couple of examples of how the U.S. Open's been in front. What can they do better? I think we're seeing things that they can do better. Last year, the U.S. Open was the first tournament, the first Grand Slam tournament, really the first major tournament that had a very specific mental health plan.
Yeah.
And it was really, really well done. It was all in the headlines that mental health is important as physical health. So the U.S. Open took the lead in that. And this year, I think you're going to see something pretty cool. The week before the normal tournament starts, but now it's actually going to be a 3-week tournament. It's called Fan Week. And you're going to see Fan Week really expand and open up really for everyone to come and see one of the largest tennis tournaments in the world, which is the qualifiers of the U.S. Open, for free.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. So I think the U.S. Open and the USTA have been a little bit in the front of really advancing social justice, social change, and really being an agent of change.
Yeah, I think it's cool the Open's doing a lot around qualifiers week, because as a kid I would go to qualifiers a lot because they were free, and it's really, it's fun to go and see the matches and see it played where it's not like Roger Federer and players that everyone knows, but it's just real hard fought tennis. So it's really cool.
I mean, you're seeing like number 100 to number 200 in the world competing against each other. But the other thing that's really cool, and a lot of people know this, you can be like in the front row watching someone like Rafael Nadal actually warming up. And
yeah,
that's pretty cool too, because normally a lot of people that those front row seats are for the high rollers and the high payers and so forth. So it's really nice to be up front and watching them train.
That sounds really cool. Do you feel tennis's nature as an international sport has influenced the sport's ability to spark social conversations?
So something very interesting happened in the international world of tennis, and it was right around the time when the Berlin Wall came down, and the USSR was falling apart. So the Soviet Union was breaking up, and all of a sudden you saw the world become smaller, if you will, because now people in Eastern Europe could travel to Western Europe. They could compete against each other. And the International Tennis Federation, I think they did an incredible job of opening up the entire world to tennis. Mm-hmm. But interestingly, around that time, you saw American tennis was no longer dominating.
Yeah.
Because when so many other countries didn't have such equal access, it was easy for America to be at the top. Really, it was America and Australia. All of a sudden, you have all of these individuals from countries that a lot of people didn't even know about. And the International Tennis Federation just opened the world up to tennis. And so I think that was an important element of saying, hey, tennis is for everyone. It's not just for the elite. And we're going to make it accessible to every single person in every single country in the world.
I actually just did a video on the Berlin Wall and how when the Berlin Wall collapsed, tennis was able to unite Western and Eastern Germany, because they were both able to root for Steffi Graf and other top German players and really bring the two countries together. So I'm glad to bring that up and talked about it in a different light. Do you feel tennis is an exclusive sport played only by the wealthy and the elite, as many say, or do you feel it is a sport for everyone?
Well, I deeply believe it's a sport for everyone, but it has this perception of being sort of an all-white country club sport. And that really is in some ways how it did grow up. And we have to, just as we have to look at the history of racism in our society, there was a history of racism in tennis. Mm-hmm. In fact, there is the American Tennis Association, which is an all-black tennis association that was formed because the blacks didn't have the same rights to compete against the whites. So Althea Gibson broke down that barrier for the women, Arthur Ashe for the men. So tennis is radically changing. It is truly a sport for everyone. In the parks, in the schools, I just think we could do a better job of truly making it available for everyone.
I agree. Final question of the day, why tennis? Why do you think tennis has been able to be such an influential platform for social activism throughout its history?
Well, I think when you have individuals competing and they can be on the stage as individuals rather than as a team, say a large football team. How does a large football team promote social activism?
Yeah.
Well, there have been attempts where some people will kneel when the national anthem is being played, but what if the whole team doesn't kneel? And so you have these team dynamics that you don't have in tennis. And I think because tennis has been at the forefront, for example, after the Berlin Wall, of offering equal prize money to women, of allowing players to show their concern for Black Americans who have been murdered. I think when you have prominent individuals who are willing to stand up, that really makes the difference. And you have, again, going back to my hero Arthur Ashe, how he really stood up and said, look, tennis is for everyone. It should be for the underserved, for the underprivileged. We have to be aware of what's happening in the world, and we have to make certain that tennis is a vehicle for everyone to be educated and concerned. It just has this deep-rooted history where tennis makes a difference. So I think that's probably why tennis is able to do that probably as well as or even better than any other sport.
Thank you. That's all the questions we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Hainline.
All right. My pleasure.
Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for more content coming up soon, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
All right.
Wow.